Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. Sony today revealed their new PlayStation 5 controller, the DualShock, the DualSense 5, DualSense 1. The DualSense, we'll just start with that. It's right behind me here. Let's get started. Alright, so here's a better look at the majestic beast of a controller from PlayStation 5. Where do I get started on this one? I think this one right out of the gate gives a love it or hate it kind of vibe to it. It's not necessarily a more of the same from Sony. This is something brand new. I guess you could argue that every single controller from Sony for each system is a brand new controller. Technically it is, but this is a little different in terms of design. And I've seen a lot of people online saying they love it, and I've seen a lot of people saying they hate it. So initial impressions aside, I'll talk about the visual aspects of this controller first, and then talk about the technical details. So visually, right out of the gate, the very first thing I noticed was that the bottom of the new DualShock, the new DualSense, I'm going to have to get used to saying that. Anyways, the new DualSense controller, the PlayStation 5 controller, has different bottoms than the DualShock 4. So the DualShock 4 here, they're nice and rounded, where the DualShock 5, the DualSense, geez Louise, I'm really gonna have to get used to saying DualSense. The bottoms are very similar here to the Xbox One controller. And if you don't believe me, I'll hold this right up to the camera and you can kind of see. Now, yes, there are some subtle differences, but you can see the original shape of this Xbox controller here is very similar to the bottom of the shape of the DualSense 5, the DualSense 1, the PlayStation 5 controller. Also, the analog sticks appear to be closer together. So here is the DualShock 4. Taking a look at the analog sticks, they do look slightly closer together on the DualSense controller. On top of that, the analog sticks go down a little bit here. They go down underneath the bottom of the controller, just a slight little bit, where they seem to be more embedded in the DualSense controller here. So I don't know if the DualSense is a narrower controller, maybe made for smaller hands, maybe made for a wider variety of hands. I'm not quite sure. But what I can see is that they're really stepping away from the traditional DualShock look. And right here in the very center of the controller, if you can see it, I'll circle it with my mouse, that's a built-in microphone. So looking at this from a more technical aspect now, that is a microphone. So there is a built-in microphone to the controller, which I really like seeing. Now, whether or not that's going to be great in terms of if you're going to hear button clicking and stuff while you're trying to talk into it, I'm assuming you probably will. At least it will function as a microphone, which is a huge step in the right direction. Now, the D-pad on the controller looks extremely similar to the D-pad on the DualShock 4. So you can see the dual pad right here. It looks almost identical. Now, in terms of overall function, how it's going to feel, I don't know. Will it be clicky? I don't know. I'm kind of hoping they went the route of the PS Vita, that D-pad feel. I love that D-pad. So I'm hoping they went that route. If they keep the original DualShock 4 D-pad here and just maybe tweaked it slightly, I don't see that being a big issue. Next up is the share button. So the share button on the DualShock 4 no longer exists on the DualShock. The DualSense. I'm going to keep calling it the DualShock. Even when it's released, I'm probably going to call the controller the DualShock. So I will warn you in advance. I keep saying it. Anyways, the DualSense controller has a create button. The DualShock 4 controller has a share button. So the share button has been replaced by that create button right up there. The light bar on the controller is no longer on the top. So on the DualShock 4, it is on the top of the newer versions. On the older versions, it's just kind of right here. But the DualShock 4 does have that light bar on the top. Most of you probably already know that. And the DualSense controller here, I'm going to keep calling it that. The DualSense controller does have the light bars on the side. Now, does this matter? I don't even like the light bar to begin with, so if there's an option to turn it off, that will be great. But I guess some people really love the light bar, and Sony did too, so it's on the DualSense 5, the PlayStation 5 controller. I'd also like to point out from an initial glance here, both the create and the options buttons seem very close to the triangle button and the D-pad. So the create button in relation to the D-pad and the options button in relation to the triangle button here seem to be in a danger zone. where you might accidentally press them. They're very, very close. I can easily see your finger slipping off the triangle button and hitting that options button. Again, I don't know how big this controller is, how it's going to fit in your hand, but initial impressions compared with the DualShock 4 place those two buttons in a danger zone, something to watch out for, maybe. On the top of the controller, they've included a USB-C connector. Now, I'd be really surprised if Sony didn't include a USB-C. It's kind of industry standard nowadays. It's actually really surprising too how fast we've moved to USB-C. But anyways, we're USB-C now. If it had anything other than that, I would be shocked. So I'm glad to see it. In terms of battery life, there is a battery included in this controller, but we don't know how long it's going to last. Will it be better than the DualShock 4? Will it be worse? We don't know. But what we do know is that this controller is featuring a few new things. For example, the vibrations in this controller are more advanced than the DualShock 4. If you've experienced the vibration in the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, it'll be similar to that, hopefully better. In terms of the triggers, they'll get harder to pull as you're doing something in game. For example, if you're pulling back on a bow, the first part might be easy, and as you put more tension on that string, the triggers will actually get harder to pull back. So that'll be really neat to experience. As for more details, we'll know incredibly soon. This is just things at a high level right now. We'll know a lot more once the actual controller is released or people get a hands-on look at it. Now, in terms of the naming convention here, going with DualSense, it's kind of a shift, an evolution in naming convention, because this is an evolution in controllers for the PlayStation. If you take a look at it, compared with the original PlayStation controllers, the DualShock 1, 2, 3, and 4 kind of all bear a very close resemblance to each other. The DualShock 4 breaks away from that pattern the most, but this breaks away even more, so I can kind of understand moving away from the DualShock name. And I can kind of agree and accept the naming convention here, as weird as it is. I really think the DualSense makes a lot of sense. You're supposed to sense things through the controller with this controller, you know, with the improved vibration, the haptic feedback on the triggers, so it does make sense to me. But anyways, that is all I have for today. Let me know what your initial impressions of the PlayStation 5 controller are in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Thank you everyone, take care.